Start by acknowledging we're gathered here on the treaty and traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat, and the Anishinaabe people, and also the sagas of the credit of the First Nation. The lands are protected by the issue of one spoon wampum agreement. Hello everyone, my name is Justin Kong. I am your NDP candidate for Scarborough North. I am here with Felicia Samuels, your Ontario NDP candidate for Scarborough Rouge Park. Nathan Shan, your Ontario NDP candidate for Scarborough Centre, and Kingsley Kwok, Ontario NDP candidate for Markham Stouffville. Thank you all for being here. As the ethnic media, your role has been vital in providing our communities with important information every day, and certainly throughout the pandemic. The NDP values our strong relationship with the media. People in Scarborough trust in Andrea. They trust that she has what it takes to fix what we need to be fixed. They know that Andrea listens. Andrea cares because they've seen that her priorities are our priorities during, after, and after the election. Andrea's vision, priorities are mine, and they are our communities, and we're proud to stand with her. In 28 days, here's the next Premier of Ontario, Andrea Horvath.
Thanks all for being here, really appreciate it, and thank you for being here as well. This election is about hope. It's about letting folks know that together we can fix the things that matter most to people. We know that life's been getting harder and harder in Ontario. We know that the cost of everyday living is out of control. Everyday families should be able to afford everyday life, and that's not happening. Whether it's housing, whether it's the cost of gasoline, whether it's the cost of groceries, whether we're being worried about the healthcare system that's falling apart, seniors care, education. I think COVID-19 has shown us very clearly that there are things that families want and need that they are not getting and that their children are not getting because they've been broken by the other parties. We together can fix the things that are broken. But the first thing to do in order to fix those things is to defeat Doug Ford. We know that conservative cuts make things worse. Conservative cuts cost people more and they hurt people. And so job number one is definitely to defeat Doug Ford so that we can fix the things that matter most to everyday people. And I would want to tell people, I would want to let people know that right now, at this point, in this election, the best way to do that is by voting NDP because we have the best shot at defeating Doug Ford. And we also have really great plans to fix the things that the other two parties have broken. We have a universal mental health care plan that gets you the mental health services and therapies that you need soon, but quickly, without the waits, and without having to pay. We have a plan to fix long-term care and fix home care. Most people prefer home care to long-term care, but the services just aren't available. So not only do we want to take the profits out and put the care back in to home care and long-term care, but we need to make sure that those services are culturally appropriate and responsive to the diversity of people that call Ontario home. We also know that our hospitals are in very bad shape. We've seen hospitals be unable to deal with the massive backlogs in surgeries and procedures that we have right now in this province because staff in the hospitals are leaving healthcare completely. Nurses are walking away from the healthcare sector. PSWs are walking away from the healthcare sector, and that's putting even more pressure on our hospitals. So we need to hire, and we have a plan to hire, thousands of more nurses, thousands of more PSWs, and not only to hire them, but to make sure they know that they're respected so that we can train them, or rather retain them. We also know that there are thousands and thousands, 15,000 is the last estimate I saw, of internationally educated professional healthcare workers, nurses and others, who are not able to provide people in Ontario with the care that they could be providing because their credentials are not recognized here. So we need to expedite that recognition. There's a huge backlog at the college right now, the College of Nurses, and there's also some 2,000 folks that we could immediately begin to put on the front lines of our healthcare system that are credentialed from other parts of the world. We need to do that. And if there's one last thing, it's people are telling me they're really concerned about the cost of housing, whether that's the rent costs or the cost of purchasing your own home. Right now, young people have walked away from their dreams of ever being able to own their own home. And that shouldn't be happening in a province like Ontario. So we have some plans to take the pressure off of the housing market and also to bring rent controls back. So that those bad apple landlords that are forcing people out of their homes so that they can jack up the rents are dealt with. We need to have stable housing for people, and that's part of our plan as well. So I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for joining us, and we're happy to take any questions that folks might have.
其實即係好清楚睇到咧，就係sorry， 好清楚睇到就係我哋只係需要10席，我哋就可以執政10個席位。咁包括我哋士嘉堡5個席位，我哋有信心、有能力，選民亦都係支持我哋。好明顯，我哋去敲門就算喺街上睇到嗰啲廣告牌自由黨係絕對係冇能力去打敗呢個福特政府。我哋黨嘅何亞斯係強，佢有支持各省人嘅支持。我哋相信通過何亞斯嘅領袖，我哋可以打敗福特政府。6月2號成立執政政府。咁呢個係其實嗰啲民調好多時都會變動嘅。咁而家啱啱開始選舉，啲人開始關注下呢個問題。咁我哋覺得係感覺咧，喺社區嘅感覺咧，喺街上嘅感覺咧，喺選民嘅感覺咧，係佢哋係大力支持我哋 NDP 嘅。民調咧，我覺得會係一路咁睇到係反映到群眾對我哋嘅支持，同埋人民對我哋嘅支持，因為佢哋感覺到同埋相信到只有可以何亞斯同埋我哋安省新民主黨可信同埋有能力去為我哋普通老百姓嘅利益而奮鬥。
10席嘅意思係咁啊，即係你而家係有差唔多40席係嘛？即係攞多10席，你話
係攞多10席，我哋就可以執政㗎啦嚇。贏多我哋守住我哋40個位，贏多10個位，咁我哋就已經係可以執政㗎啦嚇。
贏多10個就可以執政，即係唔係話保住你哋正式反對黨嘅？
係唔係？我哋而家係正式反對黨40個席位。當我哋今年6月2號贏多10個席位嘅情況底下，我哋就會足夠呢個議席去執政，去方交人哋嚇。
Majority of the voters from the Chinese community believe that investment infrastructure is key for long-term, steady economic development. Why do the Ontario NDP believe this should not be the priority for Ontarians? Doesn't infrastructure projects create more jobs?
On the contrary, New Democrats absolutely believe that infrastructure creates jobs, and any government is going to make the investments necessary in infrastructure. The issue is what kind of infrastructure and where. And we don't believe in building highways through the Greenbelt, building highways, building huge highways to massive homes that nobody can afford. We don't believe that paving over farmland and paving over wetlands and environmentally sensitive areas are the right things to do. But we have long advocated for improvements to highways that really actually create safer roads for people to drive on, and that really do impact the congestion that people face. These are not the things that Doug Ford is talking about. He's basically pushing forward highway projects that help his buddies, his developer buddies particularly, to make more money. We have to focus on the kind of infrastructure that makes roads safer, that does actually address the needs of people. We need a premier that's working for you instead of a premier that's always working for his buddies. Our plan for our Green New Democratic deal, it's very, very full of, packed with all kinds of infrastructure projects, but with the climate crisis, with the climate emergency as the goal. We have lots of plans to not only improve existing infrastructure, but to build new infrastructure. But the biggest difference is that we do that because it's what people need, and what will help people in Ontario. And that it will be our priority always. How do we make life better for the people of Ontario? Not for the buddies that we favor, not for the developers that give us hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to help us on our election campaign, but for the everyday people of this province.
Next question will come from Joseph Lau from TorontoTV.
Hello, hi. I have two simple questions. The first one is that this year is the year of the election. We have a municipal election and also provincial election. And then the municipal election runs about 5 months, and normally federal election runs about 35 days. But this time we only got 29 days for Ontario provincial election. So why is this such a short campaign period? Do you guys have an answer?
So you're not incorrect about the other pieces. There is a municipal election coming in the fall, and people could start registering very recently to run in that election. So that's really a good question in terms of identifying the difference. Ontario elections are usually 28 days. They're 29 days is normal for Ontario. Federally, you're correct though. It's longer for the federal as well. But as you may know, I've been a leader for a couple of campaigns now, and I just want to assure you that in fact we're at pretty much where we are all the time. It's usually a 28-day writ period. So
I believe that a short period may not be good for those new candidates because it's hard to get their names out within like 29 days. All right, my second question is that in our community, like Chinese community, many are newcomers. I believe this happens to other ethnic communities too. So that my question is about your NDP policy on diversity and also racism. And also that some ex-presidents, they are against the TOC in your region, the transit-oriented communities. That is, the old immigrants doesn't like the new immigrants, or they don't like the change. So my question is about the NDP policy on diversity and also anti-racism. Thank you.
Thanks so much, and I'll start the response, and then if any of you would like to add, please feel free. In terms of the diversity of our commitment to diversity, it's something that we have for a long time been striving to show instead of just believe. And so this particular election, I'm excited about the diversity of candidates that we have. And we had the same last time around, but even more this time. In fact, this campaign, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's 80% of our candidates are from equity-deserving groups. And so that includes people from every ethno-cultural, racial, faith background, representing all different geographical areas of our province, and that's exciting. Why? Because that's who we are as a province, and to have voices at the table that really do have lived experience as well as deep connections with their communities will only make our decisions better once we form government. Last election in 2018, as well as back in 2014, we had 50% women. So it was a milestone for Ontario back in 2014, the only party that had ever been able to achieve that. And we achieved it again in 2018, and we'll be achieving it again in this election campaign as well, as far as I can tell, based on our candidates. But this is also why we talk about things like the solutions to our staffing crisis, our human resources crisis in healthcare, for example, can be fixed with making sure that people who bring talent and education and credentials from other parts of the world to Ontario should be able to get through the process of accreditation here much more quickly. We've made some commitments in that regard. You may know Dolly Begum, who is the MPP for Scarborough Southwest, and she has done some really important work on exactly that piece. How do we get people into the pathways to be able to get the Canadian experience, or the Ontario experience more importantly? How do we make sure that the mentorship programs are there, that physicians are able to get the placements to be able to practice here? We know that there are physicians literally that live in Ontario and they cross the US border to work every day, because in the US their skills are acknowledged and recognized, their credentials are able to be achieved there. But right across the border, here in Ontario, that's not the case. This is something that's been talked about a lot, but never fixed. We want to fix that, and so this is why we're finding that what I personally, as the leader, have worked really hard with Nathan and others to make sure that we're not only bringing candidates into our team, but that we're getting those candidates elected as MPPs. The other part of your question around around tension and transit-oriented communities, I think everybody realizes how challenging it is right now to find a place that you can afford to put a roof over your head, whether you're purchasing, whether you're renting. We know that the cost of gasoline is going up, and it's not, for me, it's not so much about transit-oriented communities as it is about whole communities. The communities that are yes, they absolutely support transit, but they support pedestrians, they support families, they support singles, they support low-income folks, people with disabilities. We have to have communities that meet everyone's needs, and transit is a big part of that. But I know in some of the GTA communities that right here in Scarborough and in other places, other infrastructure is not available either to folks. I mean, we know that the healthcare is not as accessible as it should be. We've seen even during COVID, very much so, the lack of attention paid to communities like Scarborough and like Brampton is another example. The thing that I think the governments need to do is fix those problems. No matter where you live in Ontario, you should be able to have access to things like good schools that aren't crumbling around your kids' ears, schools where the kids have the supports that they need to have a great education, the healthcare services that you need to provide for timely care that's convenient to people, and make sure that life can be affordable for folks. And so we talk a lot about transit-oriented communities, and that's an important thing. We need to get people out of cars and onto transit. But Scarborough is a good example of how government after government really has failed in terms of the transit needs of these communities, for sure.
Justin, did you want to chime in a little bit on migrant anti-racism?
Yeah, English or preference?
Yeah, to me, either.
係咯，其實我們安省新民主黨就是我們是最有力的黨去解決這個種族歧視問題。我們知道就是在疫情期間，我們亞裔華人還有很多別的有色人種都受到蠻大的種族歧視。特別在疫情期間，這個反亞裔種族歧視非常嚴重。 我本人也在这个反亚裔种族歧视工作做了一些工作。当然了，我们工作是一起来做的，我们要动员我们社区一起来去反对这个种族歧视。我也相信我们新民主党是最有能力去解决这个种族歧视，去教育我们省民关于这个种族歧视问题。我们很多次已经要求过这个福特政府去正面还有面对这个种族歧视问题，但这个福特政府没有认真，没有投资资源进去解决这个种族歧视问题。我们需要支持受影响的团体包括我们华人亚裔团体，就是在疫情期间受到不同种的种族歧视非常严重所以我们需要一个政府会正面面对这些问题，还有投资资源去解决，还有协助我们受影响的社区。那我们新民主党也是很多不同主义的朋友一起来反对种族歧视，他们也在他们的社区做这个反对种族歧视做得很强，也是做了很多所以我们新民主党绝对会在这个反种族歧视问题方面去面对，还有去解决教育我们的省民，确保我们无论我们是什么背景、什么种族的朋友，都能够受到欢迎，在安省还有一个好的生活，还有一个好的未来对，因为这个种族歧视问题是很重要，是关乎到我们全在加拿大在安省的一个重要考虑福特政府真的整个疫情来没有认真处理这个种族歧视问题，也没有认真说这个反亚裔种族歧视的问题所以我相信这个我们新民主党能够为我们优势人种、为我们华人社区、为我们移民社区发声因为我们也在这个反亚裔方面，我们也推动了一些很多方面的政策当我们成立政府，我们也会继续去做，去保护我们移民社区，还有我们亚裔社区确保所有优势人种的社区都受到尊重对。
A lot of anti-Asian hate through COVID, and it existed before, but COVID made things even worse. And we know that there's a lot of racism and hate out there, and it's growing. And that's something that I think governments need to be thoughtful about and take action on. For a number of years, we were pushing to get the Liberal government to start proactively addressing the racism and hate in our province. And we did finally get them to put in place the Anti-Racism Directorate. Unfortunately, Doug Ford came along and took away most of the funding from the Anti-Racism Directorate, and that's taken us backwards. So again, it shows you the cuts that Conservatives bring do end up hurting people. We will not only make sure that the Anti-Racism Directorate is funded appropriately, but that we actually use it as a tool to start fighting back against the hate. We also have a bill that we had put forward that we will bring back called the Our London Family Act, which came as a result of the work that we did with the National Council of Canadian Muslims after the attack on that family in London that you may recall, that tragic, it wasn't even tragic, it was a hate-fueled terrorist attack in London against that family. And in that bill, we talk not only about Islamophobia, but we talk about anti-Asian hate, and we talk about anti-Black racism, and acknowledge, and anti-Indigenous racism, and homophobia, and transphobia, and sexism. These are things that we know exist, and in knowing, we have a responsibility to try to address. And so there are a number of pieces to what we're hoping to do. If we can form government this time, we can actually start acting on that. And it's everything from our education system to making sure that we have, for example, safe zones around places of worship, so that people don't have to go into their place of worship and be looking over their shoulder for someone that might be coming in to attack them. And there's a lot more in that bill as well. I don't want to, go on and on about it, but it is important. We've been, the NDP has for a long time, trying to force government to take some responsibility in that regard, and I'm looking forward to getting the opportunity to do that myself.
Go ahead.
個個人移民嚟加拿大咧都想安居樂業嘅，但係種族歧視呢方面咧係俾新移民同埋移民好多困難，特別係疫情呢2年之外係反亞裔嘅種族歧視或者直情係反少數民族嘅種族歧視咧係一個好大嘅問題。我哋已經見到皇家騎警或者其他市區嘅警署咧都係話反亞裔種族歧視係一個好大嘅問題。新民主黨咧一路都已經係針對住省政府需要應付呢個問題嘅。咁自由黨政府又好，保守黨政府又好咧，佢哋都係冇負佢哋嘅責任。咁我哋新民主黨咧就係針對呢一方面，同埋我哋係想支持所有省民點樣應付嘅。如果要需要警察或者保安嘅話，喺呢一方面，如果係需要喺教育呢一方面要增加責任嘅、增加資助嘅話，喺呢兩方面咧，我哋都係會負責嘅。
我们今年选举有个非常重要的选择我们知道多年来自由党跟保守党政府破坏和忽略了我们省们非常需要的重要服务，他们没有让我们生活更可负担，只是让生活更昂贵，未来越来越困难。今年选举只有新民主党有能力，还有省民的信任，可以打败这个保守党政府，确保我们能够为普通的安省居民去争取他们需要的福利和利益我们会投资在人民的身上，我们会确保我们的子女有一个好的未来，通过投资资源在一个我们的公共教育系统里面，我们会确保我们家人的健康，通过投资在这个医疗，那这个包括这个全民心理健康，还有这个全民牙保，还有我们要回修我们这个医疗系统多年来的问题。我们也会确保我们生活更可负担，通过协助第一次买房的朋友去买房，通过建立更多可负担房屋，还有确保我们在日常需要各方面的负担都可以减低的通过更为民的政策那这个是我们新民主党的承诺，我们有信任我们能得到选民的支持今年6月2号成立政府，为我们普通老百姓奋斗，为我们大伙儿的利益而奋斗。
Thanks very much. I really appreciate that every status. We have 40 seats that we won last time around, and in 100 out of 124 ridings in Ontario, we came either first or second. The Liberals have 7 seats, had 7 seats going from that last election, and they just don't have the strength at this point to defeat Doug Ford, but the NDP certainly does. And we're looking forward to an opportunity to show folks that instead of having a premier that works for his buddies, you can have a premier that works for you.